Good afternoon, everyone. We're just giving everyone a couple minutes to join. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. Just give everyone a couple more minutes, and just so you know, this meeting is being recorded. Okay, great. I think we can get started. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Caitlin Greeley, and I am a supervising planner with the Rhode Island Division of Statewide Planning, and I will be facilitating today's virtual listening session on the Rhode Island Solid Waste Management Plan, along with my colleagues from the Rhode Island Resource Recovery Corporation and the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management, as well as our consultants at Geosyntec and their stakeholder engagement subconsultant Transformations PR. I'd like to take a moment to introduce my colleagues joining us today. So I'll just name you, and if you could please just state your name and your title and affiliation, that would be appreciated. I'll start with Jared.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jared Rhodes. I'm the Policy and Program Director here at Rhode Island Resource Recovery Corporation. And on behalf of the corporation, I thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks. And Madison.
Hi, this is Madison Hindle with Rhode Island Resource Recovery Education and Outreach Manager.
Thanks. And Dave.
Dave McLaughlin with the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. I work on sustainability, and I appreciate your time this afternoon. Thank you.
Right. Mark.
Mark Denon from Rhode Island DEM Office of Sustainable Materials Management.
Allison.
Allison Brunelli, Rhode Island DEM, also Office of Sustainable Materials Management.
Thanks. And Hannah.
Hannah Cooper from Geosyntec Consultants.
Marissa.
Sorry, I was muted. I'm Marissa Segundo with Transformations PR.
Great. And Abby.
Hi, I'm a principal planner with Division of Statewide Planning.
Great. And Abby will be helping with any tech issues that we might have, and she'll be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions or things like that, please reach out to her. So this workshop or this virtual listening session is scheduled from 12 to 2. We have 2 hours, which sounds like a lot, but we also have a lot of material to cover. So I'm going to keep things flowing. Thank you so much for joining us and taking the time to be part of this important conversation. We're here today as part of Rhode Island's planning process for the future of solid waste management. The vision guiding this work is that by 2046, Rhode Islanders are working together to minimize waste and build a circular economy through sustainable materials management. So the purpose of today's session is to share information with you about the draft plan, hear your input, ideas, and concerns, and make sure that your feedback helps shape the priorities moving forward. Before we begin, I'd like to give a quick overview of how today's session will run. So we'll start with a presentation on Rhode Island's current solid waste challenges and opportunities and the planning process to date. After that, we'll move into discussions where you'll have a chance to react to our proposed goals and strategies, letting us know what you think, what might need adjustment, and what might be missing. And now I'm going to give the floor shortly briefly to Marissa to explain how the polling will work, which is another opportunity for you to provide input.
Okay, thank you, Caitlin. So we definitely want to hear, there's many of you on the call, 38 right now to total that up. And we want to, part of this session is your participation. And so we have some live polls where you will be able to participate throughout this session, throughout the 2 hours. And then we will be able to collect the feedback and input that into considerations of the plan. So a couple of ways that you can participate. First, you could use your phone and scan this QR code that you're seeing on your left. Or you can just use your computer, and Abby has been kind enough to put a link in the chat in the bottom dashboard panel. You should see a little.
1 minute, Marissa.
I'm sorry?
1 minute.
Okay, thank you. So that is how you can participate, is just by following that link. And then we will we'll actually start with the first poll, which is, how much do you understand currently about Rhode Island's 20-year solid waste master plan? And you'll see this, it's multiple choice. You can put A, B, or C. A is you understand a lot, maybe you're an expert. B, yeah, you maybe understand a little bit about it, or maybe it's kind of the first time you're hearing about it and you just want to learn more. So that would be on the C for not much. It looks like we've got a lot of people in the middle, 54% on the somewhat, and then we've got about the not much is decreasing, so that's good. And then 25% was a lot. Okay, somewhat. So we know a little bit, and that's good. And we'll pop on to the next question. Briefly, which role best describes you? Do you represent a municipality? Are you a public sector, whether it's in waste, composting, recycling, or other? Are you in a nonprofit space? Or are you just a member of the public? Not just, but are you a valued member of the public curious about solid waste?
And Marissa, that's time.
Okay, thank you. You should see these responses. Oops. There we go. There we go. This is what we are looking at here. So we've got a heavy municipal participation and some from, so it's a nice mix. So thank you all for coming. And I will give the mic back to Caitlin.
Great, thanks, Marissa.
You're welcome.
Okay, so just to finish up a little bit of housekeeping. So at the end, after we discuss the goals and strategies, we'll have time for a short Q&A where you'll be able to ask questions or raise additional ideas. And we'll close with some next steps about how you can continue to share feedback after today. Throughout this session, we encourage you to participate actively and respectfully. You can use the chat, as I mentioned, to share questions or comments, the polling that Marissa just shared to respond to specific goals and strategies. And you'll also have the opportunity to speak during the discussion portions. So we'll ask you to raise your hand and we will unmute you one at a time. Keep in mind that time is limited for each discussion option, so please keep your comments brief. And we do not have time for a back and forth conversation. All feedback will be recorded and considered as we refine the plan, and materials from today's session, along with the draft plan, will be available on our project website. So with that, let's get started. We'll begin with a presentation to provide some background and context for the discussion ahead. All right, so I just wanted to start with a brief overview of where we are in the planning process and what we've done to date. So stakeholder engagement has been taking place throughout this process. This is one of our key events. We also held an in-person public workshop last week, which closely mirrors this event, just adapted for a virtual format here. I also just want to briefly mention we have a technical advisory group. Some of you are members. I see who have been contributing their expertise to this process. And we've met and they have provided input on some of the draft vision goals and strategies that we'll be presenting today. We've also reviewed best management practices, done a SWOT analysis, and looked at future projections. So right now we're at task 7, as you can see, the recommended objectives, actions, and strategies. And so we're seeking your input on those today. Next slide, please. And next slide, thank you. Okay, so some of the challenges that we've identified through this process include there's limited space in the landfill and aging infrastructure. Enforcement and compliance could be stronger. There are high contamination rates of the recycling stream. So items that shouldn't be going into recycling are going in there, and low diversion rates, market volatility for recyclables, equity gaps and public skepticism, and regulatory and zoning barriers. Next slide, please. Some of the opportunities that we've identified through this process include there's an opportunity to expand the extended producer responsibility and bottle bill programs, upgrade recycling and composting infrastructure, adopt best practices from other states, increase education and multilingual outreach, strengthen partnerships and grant programs, and develop new markets and incentives for diversion. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide. So I'm going to share our draft goals. We have 10 of them, and for the purposes of this virtual session, we've grouped them into themes. What I'm going to do is just read them out to you, and then Marissa will introduce the polling question, and you'll have the opportunity to react to them or ask questions. So, and these are not in any particular order. I just want to emphasize that. All Rhode Islanders are aware of the environmental and financial impacts of waste and the importance of reducing, reusing, recycling, and diverting materials from disposal. All communities have access to modern, convenient collection systems, enabling sustainable, resilient, and cost-effective materials management. And the needs of disadvantaged communities have been included in all aspects of waste planning, including engagement, service delivery, and the siting of new facilities. So we have several minutes to react to those. If you have any comments or questions, please raise your hand and we'll allow you to talk if you wish to speak. You can also use the polling or the chat.
Great, Caitlin, and as Caitlin mentioned, we have that same poll that you all interacted with earlier, and this one you can actually do qualitative responses. So if you want to write a sentence about what you thought about the public awareness and community goals, do you affirm those goals? Do you think those work? Do you think that there is an opportunity to add something, or maybe there's gaps that exist? Maybe you just want to give a thumbs up and say good job. Could you put the goals back up on the screen? I can, but it's gonna disable so here's the goals, and I'm actually gonna I can't highlight them. Oops, sorry. I wonder if someone else could highlight the goals and put them in the chat from a different document. I don't know if that's possible.
I'll try to do that, Marissa.
Okay. I'm seeing we've got some, oh wait, there you go. That's great, thank you. So now the goals are in the chat. If you need to see them better, you can also extend your chat bar. So I'm going to go back to the live poll. So once again, it's the poll EV / Marissa polls that you see right up here. All right, they are lofty goals. I'm curious to see the action steps. Yeah, and this is a safe space, so how however you want to comment that's respectful is super helpful. A large portion of the community just hopes the solid waste goes away. They have very little understanding of the financial and environmental impact. That is true. All right, they are good goals. Looking forward to implementation. We're seeing education is key. I'm gonna try to scroll down here. Gets a little complicated. Nope, sorry. There we go, now I can grab it. So education and state aid are key. And then you've already realized that you can also thumbs up or thumbs down someone else's idea. So if somebody took your idea, you can you can just affirm one that's already there. So I'm seeing a lot of votes. It doesn't look like, okay, recycling is not a priority for some people. That's accurate. Convenience is. Okay. Seeing a lot of new. How do I add comments on the goals? So I'm seeing that come in from the chat, Glenn. So if you want to follow this link that's in the chat, or you can scan this QR code and respond via the poll. You're also welcome to place it in the chat if that's more accessible to you. We have another chat that says, was disappointed in the political changes associated with this year's bottle bill effort and integrated solid waste management and recycling plan. How do we do better in light of these political changes? Okay, I'm seeing votes, but I'm not seeing a lot of new thing. We have about 2 minutes left. So if you want to put comments either in the poll or in the chat, please do that. Many people are convinced that it all goes to the same place. Better myth busting, I guess, is the goal there. All right. I don't see any new comments. We have about a minute left. Always look at new methods. Okay, I think that's the countdown. 3, 2, more focus on the reduction of waste. And better myth busting. Yep. So all the comments, that's a good, thank you, Charlotte. All your comments are saved, but as people vote, it repositions the comments. So the ones with the most votes go to the top. That does not mean that those are the only ones that we'll be using, but it helps us to get a sense of, the general temperament of how others are looking at the comments that are coming in. Okay, thank you all for participating. I'll pass it back over to Caitlin.
Great, thanks, Marissa. Okay, so our next batch of goals that we are asking for your input on are themed by waste reduction and recycling systems. So waste generation is minimized through appropriate product design, reuse, and recycling. Wide-ranging recycling and diversion efforts utilize state-of-the-art systems and sustainable end markets in furthering material circularity. And post-central landfill phase 6 disposal capacity is available for waste streams that cannot be effectively reused, recycled, or diverted. And one aspect of this number 3 that we are interested in your input is your thoughts on whether that should be, like, once the landfill has reached capacity, whether our waste should be going out of state or we should be keeping it in state. And the cost for, as I understand it, for shipping waste out of state is significantly higher than keeping it in state. But of course, we would need some space for a landfill elsewhere than it currently is located. So any discussion that you'd like to have on that, we'd welcome as well. And we'll copy and paste those goals against in the chat so that you can reference them.
Sometimes it takes just a minute for and people may be thinking, it's a lot to decide your waste system.
You can also reference the goals by number.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. Caitlin's got those in there. It doesn't have the number, but they go.
Yeah, I
1, 2,
apologize.
3. It's okay.
And you're also welcome to, if you're more comfortable speaking, to raise your hand as well, if you prefer. And we realize these are broad, but goals are intended to be sort of broad and encompass a lot of issues. And then as you see, so we have one other set of goals, and then we'll get and drill down to the strategies that hopefully will help us achieve these goals.
Okay, so we've got good ideas, viable reduction and diversion methods, and emerging technologies and acceptance that are needed. Hoping public-private partnerships can effectively expedite the process. We're also seeing waste in the state, but keep waste in the state, but find a new landfill, exclamation point. Actually mine the landfill and extract materials. Let me see if I can scroll this down. Oh my gosh. Let me scroll you down. It's not letting me grab this thing. We always need to address education, keep, good, we've already read that. Hemosis, okay. So as those votes keep shifting this a little bit. See if I can go, oops. Sorry. There we go. Okay, so we have the state can support infrastructure and incentives, but it can't directly ensure that products are designed for recycling. So framing it as a goal feels misplaced. That's a good point. Any thoughts on composting food scraps for all cities and towns in Rhode Island? Right now, it is available for quite a fee. Consider destruction options. And clearly reducing cost is a goal, but finding a local location will be difficult. Okay, somebody posted thinking that there are new technologies that can be utilized or piloted to advance these needs and research and outreach efforts. We've got about 2 minutes left in this particular to talk about this goal, so keep your thoughts coming or your votes coming. Can we set a numerical goal on reducing waste generation? I think it's supposed to be, it's a challenge to buy into these goals statewide. Any other options than a new landfill or sending trash out of state? Wondering what kind of out-of-the-box thinking we could have here. And you will see in the second part some of the recommended strategies by material type. So I think some of those questions will be answered in the second part. Sorry if I'm making you dizzy with scrolling. I want to make sure we get everyone's thoughts here.
One minute.
Okay, thank you. Shouldn't there be an appropriate fee for discouraging high waste? Organics composting has the problem of contamination. And I think that's everybody. I didn't see any additional ones in the chat, so we'll move to the next one. Thank you for your participation in governance and funding goals. Ooh, I think that was a vote. So Caitlin, take it away.
Great, thanks, Marissa. Okay, so finally, our last two goals here with the topic of governance and funding. Modern, adaptive, sufficiently resourced, and effective systems of governance align regulatory oversight, the provision of technical assistance, and enforcement with statewide goals and emerging waste streams. And funding needs are supported by proportionate producer and user-based mechanisms.
I think we had a little confusion on the last. I think we ended up scrolling. I scrolled to the wrong one. So you can still use, or maybe should we use the chat for this so we don't, I don't know. We can, I think it'll be.
Let's use the same one, and then I think we'll be able to tell the difference between the topics.
Or I can actually do, oh, I guess it repeated. I can fix that. So we'll use the same goal, but now we are talking specifically about the governance goals.
Yeah, and then I'll go ahead and copy and paste those so you guys can write.
Thank you. On the education front, we have a comment that came in. On the education front, any thoughts on creating, oops, the chat just went down. Okay, on the education fronts, any thoughts on creating a scannable barcode to educate users on what items can be recycled and place it on their recycling cart? Pull them directly to an app or help identify them and how they can be disposed. Okay, so trying to see what's different from this one. I'm not seeing a lot of new ideas coming through here. I know it's a little bit confusing, so I apologize. Oh, looks like we've got some, the chats are, or the goals are in the chat in case you need to reference those. Matthew loves Angelo's suggestions, but I don't know which one was Angelo's. Investments by independent companies should have priority. Organic, so that we've already talked about that one. Those two goals are word salad. The average Rhode Islander isn't going to connect. Oh, come on, isn't going to. It keeps moving. I appreciate your participation. I'm going to read that one. Composting. The state can help with infrastructure. Oh, that was for the last one. The two goals are words. Okay, we said that.
And it does sound like there's a little bit of confusion on these goals, which is fair feedback. If any member of the PMT is open to explaining a little bit, please feel free.
Yeah.
Caitlin, try and clarify these a little bit, or maybe, add a few more words. The first one, waste generation is minimized through appropriate product design, reuse, and recycling. I think the primary intent of this one is just for Rhode Island to try and use whatever leverage it has to ensure that products that hit our markets are designed to be recyclable in the first place. Many aren't. The second portion of this, wide-ranging recycling diversion efforts utilize state-of-the-art systems and sustainable end markets. That particular piece is just to ensure that we have the best technology and the best processing and collection capability that is available to us, which in some instances we don't. So I want everyone to know that I clearly hear the comments about these maybe not necessarily being clear and crisp, and that we will certainly take these comments into consideration in trying to refine those. I hope that helps.
1 minute.
Great. Any other thoughts? I don't see this moving anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to you for the next part.
Great, thank you, Marissa. Okay, so now we're moving on to seek your input on our draft strategies. So these are what are going to help us achieve the goals that we just brought to you. And we have divided these up by material stream. And each member of the PMT I introduced you to earlier is going to take several of these waste streams, read out the strategies to you, and then lead a discussion. And again, we'll have these, either you can respond and react via the polling or the chat, or raise your hand if you have a question and would like to speak. So next slide, please. Okay, we'll start with Dave and food waste.
Great. Good afternoon. Happy to help facilitate this conversation here for a little bit less than 7 minutes. So I appreciate your time. I think it's appropriate that we're having this meeting during the lunch hour, and that the first strategy that we talk about is food waste. Food is incredibly important for the health of everyone on the planet, and it's certainly a missed opportunity when we have the food going into the landfill. So to supporting this waste stream, facilitating it within the solid waste management plan, we've identified several strategies here. And again, I think we're going to follow the same format, that you'll be able to provide some comment in a poll, but also within the chat function, in which I'll try to provide some responses. Rhode Island does have an existing food waste ban, but we've identified that we can probably do better with enforcing the existing food waste ban. There's a component of it that we want to exist the school waste management requirements. Currently, there's some requirements, but we could make those more stringent as well as enforce them. There's been a proposal to adopt a waste disposal surcharge to fund food waste prevention efforts. In some states, this is called polluter pays, but it's a way to incentivize further diversion and actually fund different grant programs to mobilize the organics circular economy. Another strategy was expanding community-based food waste composting initiatives. So this perhaps would not be your large-scale processing, but this could be different type of residential pickup, residential processing, as well as reuse options. So we want to make sure that we're supporting all shapes and sizes of how to fit solutions into the box of how to make this happen. We want to support food recovery organizations. And again, when we think about food recovery and the EPA wasted food hierarchy, we certainly want to make sure that we're feeding people in our community in Rhode Island. Any food that's not edible, we should be sure that we use it in the best way practical for feeding animals. And then we want to make sure that we use it to create healthy soils that can be used to grow more food, potentially using the food afterwards if that option isn't available in some type of waste to energy processing. But we want to try to recover as much food as possible. And last but not least, but to increase food waste prevention via public education and outreach. I think some of the points mentioned earlier today already have emphasized that one size doesn't fit all, and we need to make certain that we're meeting people where they are, providing the tools, the technology, the information, the available processes to support food waste diversion. Some people live in very dense urban settings. Other people are very rural settings in the state here. And we need to make sure that we're, providing education and outreach that supports these diversion strategies. We don't have to get into the numbers, but there's a lot of food waste out there. And so it's an opportunity for us here in Rhode Island. So happy to I guess go to a poll and seek out some your thoughts on any gaps or opportunities that you see on the strategies for food waste. I think they were mentioned in the other slides, but if you want to echo similar points, if you want to ask a question in the chat, I'll do my best to respond. I'll commentate the responses that come in through the poll. Got a little bit less than 3 minutes to go in this section, so it's actually a lot of time if you think about it. Yeah, appreciate that. Definitely having Rhode Island business. Need to make sure that that's one of the benefits of a circular economy is we'll make sure that the cost structure is such that the finished product is what's driving the economic engine. We need to increase the demand for that finished product. Agree with the diversion principles. We need to make sure that anything diverted is included in the mandatory diversion goals that were set by the state and amended in 2008 and 1986. I think it's good to bring up the third-party collection services. One of the things we need to make certain about is quantifiable metrics. We need to get a handle on what's going on out there. So a fair amount of organics that are being diverted right now, but we might not necessarily know how to quantify it. So appreciate bringing that up. Well, I think a good point about the grocery stores and the food waste and the sell-by dates. This is a very important piece that we want to work closely with the Rhode Island food strategy, which is being led by Rhode Island Commerce. We also want to work with the Rhode Island Food Policy Council, a nonprofit, but we need to make sure that as much edible food is redirected to the community. Depackaging are best practice approaches if you have to get rid of it that way, but definitely make sure that we could incorporate it. So that's a great comment that the solid waste management plan and the Rhode Island food strategy plan, and that for that matter, the Act on Climate, these are all plans that need to have integration. So thanks for bringing that point up.
And that's about 30 seconds.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for providing this feedback. Really good points. And again, we'll make sure that we try to organize these. And as was mentioned, we will take these all into consideration, how to implement the plan. Thanks for the opportunity to talk together. And I'll be back later on for the final topic of the day. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Dave. So next we have Jared up on common solid waste.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Again, Jared Rhodes from Rhode Island Resource Recovery Corporation. One of the central concerns and topics to be addressed in this solid waste management plan is how to ensure that we maximize the disposal capacity that we currently have in the central landfill through phase 6, and then what to do with our waste once that capacity has been exhausted. So to date, we have about 5 strategies that are dedicated to this topic. The first one is to try and further incentivize the use of out-of-state commercial disposal capacity. The next is to increase municipal pay-as-you-throw programs, to potentially transition the central landfill to a municipal-only facility, to permit central landfill phase 7, or to do another vertical expansion on the landfill. The last strategy that we have here is to prepare out-of-state transfer alternatives for municipal waste. Now, I went through these rather quickly, but I want to point out that for this subject and the next subject, we have the most time available for your input. And I would love to hear your voices today, and I would love to be able to give you some direct feedback. So if you would consider raising your hand and speaking up, that would be great. If not, please share your thoughts and concerns on these through the polling process or through the chat session. Again, we're very interested in learning if you think these strategies are appropriate, if you think there are strategies that are missing. And as Caitlin mentioned early on, one of the questions we're very interested in learning Rhode Island's thoughts about is whether or not Rhode Island should be focusing on providing its own disposal capacity in state, or if alternatively we should be looking to transfer our waste out of state once we have exhausted the disposal capacity of the central landfill. With that, I'll stop talking and hope that one of you guys will chime in or give us some feedback through the chat or the poll.
Jared, this is Marissa. I'm going to just help you as the comments come in, so we can, capture those. There's something that came in the chat saying something not talked about much. Encourage/incentivize people to bring their own Tupperware and takeaway boxes when they dine at restaurants or attend conferences where there's usually a lot of food waste. Let's de-shame the idea of taking leftovers home from public events and incentivize folks with a gift card or discount or on a meal or something if they bring their own reusable food container for leftovers. This is already happening with coffee mugs. Why not food?
Excellent. Thank you, Marissa. And that's great feedback. And we will certainly incorporate that into the food waste conversation. I see we have some comments coming in. Pay as you throw, a great way for municipalities to pay for food composting programs. Yep, that's true. That's one of the benefits of pay as you throw, is it encourages people to find other diversion opportunities as opposed to just relying on disposal. No transfer out of state, too expensive, and is only giving someone else the Rhode Island problem. Very much appreciate that comment. That is exactly the sort of feedback that we're hoping to get today, and will help structure the ordering or the timeline for the strategies that are recommended here. My takeaway from that is that we should do all that we can to utilize the disposal capacity that is and may be available at the central landfill before we move forward with moving out of state. I also see the comment on agreeing with the municipal only option. Commercial waste companies seek other solutions. That is a strategy that the corporation has used very successfully over the past 5 or 6 years, and there is an opportunity to continue that. However, if we do, it will drive up the current costs for disposal for Rhode Island cities and towns, and that is something that needs to be taken into consideration. Vertical expansion is probably a non-starter for the town of Johnston. A municipal-only landfill is a great idea, but the pushback from businesses will be an incredible challenge. All viable points and things that need to be considered as this plan weighs what its recommendation to the state will be. I also feel like transferring out of state simply adds to a worldwide problem. It might solve things for Rhode Island, but not for the better good. I'd rather not see our waste shipping out of state. Very much appreciate these comments, folks. And if you feel otherwise, please share those as well. But this is exactly why we're here today. So please keep them coming. Where is the development of alternative technologies to process materials received at the landfill that inevitably contain recyclable materials? Please know in this front, Resource Recovery has absolutely been keeping its eye on these technologies. We have not seen an example yet where we feel we can put the public's trust in to ensure that we are not creating a risk for Rhode Island. Mixed waste processing technologies simply are not at the development stage where we feel the state should be investing in those, but we are watching them closely. And when they are effective and have reliable markets, it's certainly something that will surely be considered further, but we simply don't feel we're at that point yet. Increasing the height only exacerbates the potential of serious landfill leachate leakage. Good point, and I would say that in this regard, if the landfill were ever to be permitted for a vertical expansion, then it would be done so in accordance with all DEM and EPA regulations, and that it would be done so in a manner which would protect and ensure that we would not be creating any excessive risks. How are we doing on time here?
Good. Do you have about 3-ish minutes left? You have a comment in the chat saying, can you speak to the dangers of increasing the height of the landfill? I know you mentioned it.
I can speak to it generally. There has been some very preliminary engineering work done on this topic, and that work shows that the vertical expansion can be constructed in accordance with all requirements and in a manner that is safe and doable. I think it's really a question of whether Rhode Islanders, including those in the town of Johnston and all the other towns, think it's the best choice, as opposed to potentially having to develop a landfill elsewhere in the state or shipping that waste out of state. Those are basically the three choices. For the foreseeable future, Rhode Island will have a need to dispose of its waste, and we'll have to do it one of those three ways. And this process that we're in now will help in deciding, excuse me, what path we choose to go down in ensuring that we have a place to put our wastes. To my understanding, eliminating single-use plastics would divert a massive amount of waste. Why is that not being considered? I think some of those things are being considered, and I think we'll hear about some of those a little bit later in our presentation. All right, it seems like we might be running out of thoughts on this topic, and I would estimate that we are kind of running out of time as well. So perhaps we'll move to our next topic.
Great, thanks. And that's also you, Jared.
Yep. All right, so again, we have about 10 minutes here, so we can get into a little bit more conversation and back and forth. So again, please do consider raising your hand and speaking up if you'd like. Mixed recyclables, right? Recycling is one of our primary diversion programs that currently exist. And although the program is challenged in some respects, it is also very productive. When the program is working well, we have the ability to divert roughly 70,000 tons of material away from the landfill every year. That's about as much solid waste as is generated by the city of Providence. So this is a very viable program. As I mentioned, it does have its challenges, though, and Caitlin spoke to some of those in kicking us off. So I'll just briefly go through these strategies that have surfaced so far in terms of how we can further improve the mixed recycling program. And the first was to increase local curbside contamination inspection and enforcement efforts. Local contamination has been one of our biggest challenges, primarily since the pandemic. Our cities and towns are mobilizing on this, and Resource Recovery is trying to help them with these efforts. But this is definitely an area that we all need to focus in on. The next strategy here is to enforce existing commercial and multifamily recycling requirements. For a very long time, everyone in Rhode Island has, by law and regulation, been required to recycle within the state. However, there has been a challenge in enforcing those requirements on the commercial and multifamily side of the equation. On the municipal side, the implementation has been very well, but the resources in terms of finances and most importantly staffing really have not been provided for on the commercial side. So there is a large opportunity here to improve the effectiveness by trying to advance our enforcement efforts on commercial mixed recyclings. The next bullet is to assess the Resource Recovery's material recovery facility and upgrade and replace as needed. And I can let you know that the corporation is very much moving this strategy forward right now. And I suspect within the next month or two, we'll have some significant announcements on how this may proceed. The next bullet here, adopt producer responsibility organization-based beverage container deposit redemption systems. I'm going to tag right in on that one. Adopt PRO-based packaging extended producer responsibility programs. These, of course, are directly related to the legislation that was introduced last year as a result of the Legislative Study Commission and the long-standing discussion in Rhode Island about implementing a bottle bill. Additionally, we have embed eco-modulation and post-consumer content requirements in these systems, again, to try and create a demand for recycled products and to create a motivation for the producers to put products on the market that are more recyclable than not. Last but not least, utilize a producer responsibility organization or an extended producer responsibility program approach to further mixed recycling education and outreach. So these are the strategies that we have come to so far. And again, I'll stop speaking at this point and very interested to hear your thoughts and hopefully provide you some feedback on some of these.
And as those responses start to come in, there was already a comment in the chat about to address single-use plastics. It's not realistic to eliminate them for to-go food and food economy / culture. A realistic approach would be to mandate that all to-go containers are biodegradable, plastic or plant-based substances with an initial incentives for companies that comply. It would cost businesses more, but eventually costs will come down. If there's enough demand, many things can be made from corn, hemp, bamboo, etc. And you're seeing an echo of that in the poll. Enforcement is key, but funding to staff programs are non-existent.
Yes, thank you, Marissa. Very, very good points. As additional comments come in, I would just note that extended producer responsibility programs are a theme that you will hear through many of our subject areas. And much of this connects to the goal of funding and who pays for the implementation and enforcement of these programs. And right now, when it comes to mixed recycling, the majority of these costs are on our municipal governments, and they're being paid for by taxpayers of our cities and towns, some of whom may or may not use the products. And what EPR does in those states that are moving it forward is it places the financial responsibility for operating, enforcing, and educating about these programs on the people who produce the products, as opposed to the property owners in the municipalities. But let me turn to some of the comments that look like they're coming in now. Contamination of recyclables is a major problem. Yes, it is. We have seen a drastic increase, as I mentioned, since the pandemic. Resource Recovery has a significant education program that is kicking off right now, and we hope that also building a new materials recycling facility will allow us to handle higher levels of that contamination. The onus cannot always be on the residential side. Commercial entity enforcement would be more impactful. We do, through this process, we do have some data now that speaks to how much mixed recycling potentially is going to disposal on the commercial side, and we intend to use that information in backstopping the recommendations that the plan puts forward. Marissa, can we scroll down a little bit, perhaps?
Yes, trying to do that. There we go.
All right, thank you very much. Vigorous enforcement efforts must be accompanied by equally vigorous efforts in funding and of public education. I agree wholeheartedly. Whether or not mixed recycling programs even have a chance to work starts and ends at the curb. If our residents don't know what should and should not be entered into the program, we start behind the 8 ball. So that's a point that is very much on target. We here at Resource Recovery are also looking forward to improvements at the MRF. I hear a lot about recycling being an issue in rental properties, depending on the number of residents. Sometimes it's up to the property owner to recycle and doesn't always happen. How will, and unfortunately the comment is cut off, but yeah, one thing a lot of people aren't always informed about is the fact that multifamily properties, typically over 4 or 6 units, are treated as commercial entities. So they're not provided with recycling services by the cities and towns, and they're essentially left to provide those responsibilities themselves. And as with many other things, if there is not a carrot or a stick to ensure that those property owners are providing the recycling, they typically won't, because it's more cost to them. It costs money to recycle. It costs money, and as a result, people sometimes either need to be given that incentive or that penalty to do it. Would we ever consider going back to multiple stream recycling? It's less convenient, but leads to a cleaner stream, I assume.
Jared, 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Abby. We hear that a lot. I'm not so convinced it does lead to a cleaner stream. We really saw our contamination issues skyrocket with the pandemic and with the national coverage around the plastic crisis, and many news pieces that said that recycling is broken and doesn't work. I'm not quite sure that's the case, that it is single stream that has led to the contamination, but it is something that we are considering in this plan, researching and trying to get ourselves educated on.
Jared, it looks like the comments are trickling down, so I think
All right.
we're at the end of this part.
With that said, again, on behalf of the corporation as a whole and our board of commissioners, thank you all for participating in this process. We need to hear from you. The state needs to hear from you. And thank you for your time and have a good day.
Great, thank you, Jared. And next up, we have Allison Brunelli leading our textiles strategies discussion.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the introduction, Caitlin. Again, Allison Brunelli with Rhode Island DEM. I'm going to follow Jared's lead because I think that the most important part of this is getting your feedback. So I'm going to go through this very, very quickly. Textiles has come to the forefront of our discussion because just this year we passed a law that I'm really happy with regarding textiles, because I think we all know that textiles, especially clothing, are one of those things that it gets passed down, and it's one of those textiles can be reused over and over and over again. So we passed a textile law this February, and the first two of our strategies are taken directly from that law. So part of it is an educational component that will be a partnership between DEM and Rhode Island Resource Recovery to work with cities, towns, and collectors to try to increase their textile collections. The other part is also a data collection that DEM will be doing to try to get a baseline of who is doing the collecting and how much they're able to bring in. And then we'll make that information available on our website. And we'll try to improve it, not weighing heavily on enforcement, because collecting textiles, we want to improve through education. The third strategy is to take this burden off of resource recovery and DEM to do the education and move it to a producer responsible organization as part of an extended producer responsible program. So if you used a program like Paint Care, where after you finish using your paint and you brought it back to a paint store, that is an example of a producer responsible organization running an extended producer responsible program. And then if we could find a program like that, one example, there's one state in the United States that has that, and that's California. If we could use that approach, it would be that strategy could greatly further textile education, because always it's the manufacturers who have better education, better outreach. They know how to do things better than an agency. They have a better understanding than an agency ever could. So I would love to move on to your comments. And while you're typing those in, so in 2015, Resource Recovery was during their waste characterization, they determined that there's just over 29,000 tons of textiles going into the landfill. That may not seem like a lot, but it is still significant. And when you think about that, even if textiles cannot be for reuse to be worn, they can still be recycled. That is definitely something we want to be diverting. And part of our education is that even if you have materials like sheets or curtains or clothing that is ripped or stained, and you would think that there's no use for it, we want to let people know that there are certain places you can bring it who absolutely will want to use it and will be able to recycle it. For example, if you bring those ripped sheets and textiles to Savers and they're not able to sell them, that Savers does have a manufacturing facility that recycles them into insulation. And that's one of the things that I learned while we were working on this bill. So do we have any more thoughts? Are there ideas that you have that would help, that you would like to see with the educational component? Okay, so try and discourage the use of fats textiles. Yeah, I think I know who this is. Really cheap and only good for one-time use. And yes, I really agree with that. I think that it's really important that we try to reuse them as much as possible. Require mattress manufacturers to make it easy to remove material from mattresses at end of life so that springs can be recycled as metal, separate materials. Yes, I know that there's some issues with our mattress recycling right now. That is another extended producer responsibility program that might need a little tweaking at this time. It doesn't quite fit into this group. They're another program. Do we have anything else? Massachusetts has a good recycling program. Massachusetts has many good recycling programs. They're diverting food waste, and they also have good curb recycling. There are many things we could talk about with that. Anybody have anything else that we can talk about? What do you think about gathering data, or what would you like to see that we can report back to you that would be helpful? Do you have any thoughts? Box springs shouldn't be treated as mattresses for disposal. Okay, we'll keep that in mind.
Allison, you have about a minute left.
Okay. Well, it seems like this is slowing down. Maybe we should move on to, unless did I miss anything?
I think the mattress comment came in after that. And I don't see anything else in the chat.
Yeah. Oh, also Massachusetts has a good mattress recycling program.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, the mattresses are handled by a mattress producer responsibility organization. So they're separate from what the textiles. They don't really fall under the same group.
That's time.
I'd love info on where companies send their textiles if they collect them back. I just wanted to catch that one too. Thank you very much for all of your comments. These are, you cannot know how helpful your comments are with things like this, or any of them.
And I would mention too, Allison, sorry to interrupt, that as part of this this plan, there were specific focus groups on each of these areas where we spoke with experts in the industry and that. So that's also feedback that'll be incorporated in the overarching plan.
Yes. So moving from textiles, we're also going to talk about another extended producer responsibility program that we have in Rhode Island. I'm going to start with the second strategy first, and that's review and modernize our existing e-waste program. Our existing program started in 2008, and then we amended it in 2017. So it's been around for a long time. You're probably familiar with it because there's a landfill ban that goes with it. And if you're a Rhode Island citizen, you're not allowed to throw televisions or computers away. So you take them to existing sites. We pretty much have one in every town. And then we have mobile collections. And you bring your computers and televisions there. Pretty easy. So since that time, we have gone from collecting around 6 pounds per person. So that's over 6.1 million pounds a year. And this year we're collecting 2.75 million pounds per person. So it's right around 3 million pounds per year. So so all of those really heavy televisions, those big ones there with the cathode ray tubes that were like fish tanks, we've caught all of those. So the weight of all of the e-waste that we've collected has really gone down. So we have room in our infrastructure to collect other things. So now we're considering modernizing our program by either maybe we could bring in other things such as printers, which would be great to have covered, or peripherals like keyboards, mice. Some states collect anything with a cord, which would just make it really easy for everyone. Or we could also perhaps cover more entities like small businesses who are they have to pay to have their e-waste collected. Large companies, because they have many, many computers, get collected at the same time because they usually upgrade everything at one time. Our e-waste collectors will come and do that for free because their computers are worth so much money. So that's something we're looking to do in the next few years. We also, I'm going to jump to the first strategy. We also need to be looking at lithium ion batteries and solar panels because those are emerging waste streams that we're going to have a lot of. Everybody knows we're going to have a lot of these in the next few years. We have them in the lithium ion batteries in our cars. You see everyone riding around on those scooter bikes with those batteries. And there is a fire hazard associated with lithium batteries. They need to be handled very carefully. They need to be handled by people who know what to do with them. So since we have this capacity within our infrastructure and people who know how to handle e-waste, perhaps we should collect them within our e-waste program. We also know that solar panels have been in Rhode Island for a long time, and they're coming to their end of life. So they might be something we want to introduce to our program. Which brings us around to the third strategy. I kind of just led right into that. And perhaps we want to have less of DEM and resource recovery who are currently overseeing this program. Perhaps we want to move it towards more of a producer responsible organization take over the responsibility of running the program, collecting fees and things like that, and furthering the e-waste education and outreach if we were to really expand the program, because it's just a lot of responsibility and employee time. So these are all things that we're thinking about and that the plan is exploring, and we would love to have your input on. So of those four, what do you think is the most important? Do you have any opinions on what you think should happen? Are you familiar with the e-waste program now? Are there things you think we can do better if we're going to amend the law? Some prominent battery and solar panels recycling companies prefer volume and don't see much value in the disposal of individual loads like a residential house. I'm sorry, Marissa, I didn't mean to
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to point out, in case others didn't see, in the chat, Caitlin has put the goals or the strategies in there, so for your reference.
Thank you, Caitlin. Is there a possibility for a public and private regional holding or staging location so that recycling companies can take them once a viable volume is reached? That's really interesting to think about. Oh, I should also mention that if we consider changing the law, we should consider a right to repair act, because refurbishment is something that we're currently doing in Rhode Island as part of our program. And that might be something that we should do more of, because if you can refurbish and resell rather than recycling, then there's much less of a carbon footprint. Yes, yes to refurbishment and right to repair. Thank you. Awesome. Is it possible to completely recycle solar panels and e-waste? I do not know about solar panels. And I do know that since the pandemic, Rhode Island is one of the leading states for refurbishing e-waste, meaning the servers, computers, and televisions that we collect, a lot of it gets refurbished and recycled.
1 minute, Allison.
Does anyone have anything left? I thank you so much for your comments. One other thing I want to think about with the law is if there is a way to incentivize refurbishment over recycling. Other states, they're giving, like instead of £1 for recycling, it's like £1.50 for refurbishment. If we could add something like that to the law, I think that would be great. State-funded e-waste programs of the past have been eliminated. We are relying on third-party organizations to provide the bulk of the e-waste recycling. People are generally willing to do the right thing if we make it easy.
And that's
Okay, great. Thank you so much for all of your comments. I really appreciate your time, everyone, and thank you for taking part in this entire meeting.
Thanks, Allison. Great discussion. Next up, we have Mark on household hazardous waste.
Hello, everyone. So household hazardous waste doesn't represent as big a volume as a lot of other waste streams. However, it requires some focus because in terms of protecting the public, in terms of reducing contamination at the landfill, certain household products, and what we're talking about here are things like oils and paints and some cleaning products that may be hazardous waste but are generated by homeowners. Industrially generated hazardous waste has its own program. Right now, these household hazardous waste is handled by Resource Recovery Corporation, and they do regular pickups in each town from time to time, where people can make an appointment and drop off their hazardous waste. And what we're looking at in the program, looking forward, are, and again, you've heard a lot, producer responsibility organizations. Allison even talked about paint care, which is an example of household hazardous waste that, in my opinion, has been very successful in terms of offering consumers a free and easy way to get rid of waste paint, which a lot of people had stored in their homes. And in this example, you can go to any of the participating hardware stores, and there are dozens of them in the state, and you can drop them off whenever the hardware store is open. This offers a lot more convenience than having to book a Saturday 6 months in advance to drop off your paint. Instead, you're going by Sherwin-Williams. You can go on the website. You can find a location with the hours, and you can drop it off at any time. So that has worked successful in that regard, not without controversy, because whenever you have extended producer responsibility, and you have, in like with paint care, when you buy a can of paint, you pay a small fee to support the disposal of the paint, and there is a nonprofit that runs the whole program in terms of paying for signage and storage at the hardware facilities and pickup and disposal after the fact. So we're looking at that kind of model. A lot of people bring the very good point up of why don't we reduce the amount of toxins in household products, and that's a good point and well taken. There is some limitation, especially if we remember that the model of consumerism is changing. So we could ban the sale of some cleaning product in Rhode Island, but you might still be able to go to Attleboro and get it where a lot of people do their shopping, or Seekonk, and even more so online now on Amazon, where so many people do most of their shopping. So it's always a challenge to keep up with those products. And of course, as with any of these things, consumer education is key. You know, people knowing what they shouldn't put in the trash and giving them a free option. One thing I would like to mention is that one of the things we'd like to look at is needles. And I'm putting this in the category of household hazardous waste. It's really household medical waste, but people who home inject needles don't right now have a free and safe and environmentally responsible way of disposing of them. We were the first in the nation to come up with such a program, and it was run by the Diabetes Foundation, and it worked very well for a few years, where they had collection locations across the state, and that has shut down since then, with the Diabetes Foundation going bankrupt, and it's not been replaced with anything. So the only option consumers have is to buy mail back containers for needles and pay for that themselves, or throw it in the trash, which has a potential hazard to the community and to the workers who handle trash. So that would be an example of one household hazardous waste that we'd like to implement. So in terms of feedback, does anybody have any feedback in terms of household hazardous waste and our strategies? Bring back additional opportunities for household hazardous waste reduction of Eco Depot collection events has a significant impact. Also bring back collection of household hazardous waste at resource recovery. Reduction in the events creates long lines and discourages proper disposal. So a very good point. You know, that if we had a permanent collection location that people could go to and just drop them off on their way to something else, that would be better. And the more convenient you make it, the less illegal disposal you see. Not sure if it's applicable for a goal, but as a town recycling coordinator, I'd recommend adding more Eco Depots in the future and more in the southern part of the state. Residents ask me all the time for household hazardous waste option, and local stores no longer collect. So again, I think it's a really good point that if we want consumers to do it, some people will go out of their way and do whatever they have to be environmentally responsible. And other people will say, well, if they wanted me to divert this, they'd make it easier and bury it in the trash or illegally dispose of it somewhere else. So the same issue that's come up with mattresses, if I make it too hard for people, they're going to just illegally dump it. Tires, another good example. Okay, perhaps we only have a limited number of comments. Let's give it another few seconds. If we don't have additional comments, we can always move on to construction and demolition debris.
Actually, Mark, Jared here. I'd like to respond to one of the comments, if I may. I do want to point out that resource recovery over the last 6 years has reduced the number of Eco Depot collections that we run. In doing that, though, we've been very diligent in collecting data about the usage of the program. And I'd like to say that even though we reduced the number of events that we're running, our participation rates are actually about the same. We have not seen a decrease in the number of attendees that attend our events. Our collection rates are about the same in terms of vehicles served and also the way it's collected. We also closely monitor our wait times. It's something we're very critical of, and we do feel that we are within the window and that our waits have not grown extensively as a result of moving from 46 collection events a year to 19. So just a little bit of data there to assist in framing the issue. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you,
About
Jared.
40 seconds left.
Thank you, Jared, for that input.
And one last point I would like to raise, since I am speaking, is that we do accept sharps at our Eco Depot events. So those who do have the ability to attend the events can always bring their sharps to us for free at those events, and we will properly dispose of them at no cost. So thank you.
Thank you.
That's time.
Okay, moving on to construction and demolition debris. So what this is debris from remodeling projects, from demolition projects. This, unlike household hazardous waste, is a pretty significant waste stream next to common solid waste. It's the largest of the waste streams, I believe. Now, right now, a lot of construction demolition debris is handled privately. There was a time when a lot more of it went to resource recovery. And as Jared mentioned about pricing strategies, the pricing strategies are such that they have encouraged a lot of the waste to be diverted out of state, especially the waste processed by those private recycling facilities. I should mention, in terms of volume, we have two demolition debris processing facilities in Rhode Island. They grind the waste and send the waste out of state. By grinding it, you make transportation much more efficient. We are looking to ban the disposal of construction demolition debris at the central landfill. We always know there'll be a little bit that makes it into the residential waste stream in terms of people doing small projects around the home, but for those larger volumes, we feel like it probably makes sense to ban it at central landfill. And there are really two reasons for that. And the first and most important reason is that because this is a very significant volume, it would extend the life of the landfill for common solid waste and municipal solid waste for a longer period of time if we stopped filling it up with construction demolition debris. There was a time in the past where we took an awful lot of that to Resource Recovery Corporation. And in terms of common solid waste versus construction demolition debris, the latter, construction demolition debris, is a better, easier candidate to transfer out of state, because when it's ground up, if it's stored in a reasonable way, and if it's taken away in reasonable timeframes, you can avoid a lot of those odor and nuisance issues, whereas trash, you have to always have it sealed in such a way that vectors like rats and seagulls and things don't create a nuisance for the waste, not only at the processing center, but in the railroad cars as it goes through communities on its way to Pennsylvania or Ohio. The second reason is construction demolition debris over the long term. When you grind it up, the calcium sulfate and wallboard, and it's mostly wallboard and wood. The wallboard together with the wood, when you grind it up and bring those together and you add moisture to the equation, you can generate a tremendous volume of hydrogen sulfide, which hydrogen sulfide creates huge odor issues and can then be a long-term expense for Resource Recovery Corporation in terms of all the methane gas is recovered from the landfill and used to generate energy, which is a great thing. And it makes that more complicated the more hydrogen sulfide you add to it that has to be removed in order to burn it. And there were times in the past where a large volume of it was accepted, and that ended up causing costly issues down the road. And also to adopt process recycling targets and reporting requirements. So ideally more of the and this does happen to some degree at private facilities now, but the more you could remove wood and metals and other materials, the more space you could potentially save. So it does come with a cost that the more you require private facilities to do in terms of sorting and recycling, the more perhaps the more costly it will do to process that waste, which ultimately makes its way down to the price of homes for people. And it also means that you need the department resources to do so. We got a comment here, requires sorting and itemizing of C&D to increase opportunities for best disposal options. So again, perhaps changing the rules under which we permit construction, demolition, debris processing facilities. I should mention, they do take waste often. This is handled by the private sector, and as such, you sometimes have out-of-state waste coming into Rhode Island facilities and Rhode Island waste going to out-of-state facilities because it's a market-driven process right now. And as I say, a lot of the waste does currently go out of state, and we look at perhaps having more of it go out of state. Thank you for that comment. Any other comments?
Mark, I would mention that Caitlin did put the strategies in the chat. So if anyone wants to go back to those, they're right there.
Okay. And one comment was strategies are worthy, tactics need work. And I'd like to know more about what maybe you could give us more detail on those tactics. And if you can't give it to us now, perhaps you give it to us in the future so we could maybe make those tactics better. We don't have any more comments. Perhaps we should move on to the next topic.
All right.
Thank you, everyone, for your attention and for your time. And I will cede to David McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to connect with everyone again, and I'm glad to see that we've got a fair amount of people still on the call, so fantastic. We're going to take this home here with our last waste stream topic to talk about biosolids. And just a little bit of background here. You know, when domestic sewage is transported and conveyed to a wastewater treatment plant, it's there at the wastewater treatment plant that it's separated from the liquids from the solids. And it does produce a semi-solid, nutrient-rich product known as sewage sludge. So you'll occasionally hear biosolids and sewage sludge used interchangeably. There are some notable differences, but I think it's fine to mix these two words. Generally speaking, there's three options for disposal: land application, landfilling, and incineration. Here in Rhode Island, we have 19 wastewater treatment plants, handle over 100 million gallons of wastewater every day, ensuring that the water is returned to the environment and it's clean and safe. All of our sewage sludge is managed through incineration, with a small amount of it resulting in ash that's sent to a landfill. The state's main incinerators are in Woonsocket and Cranston. A couple of the emerging challenges that we've identified is we're facing limited capacity, and we're also dealing with aging infrastructure. And also recently, in 2025, Rhode Island legislation passed a requirement for testing of biosolids for PFAS. It specifically talks about applying it for anyone seeking to permit to spread biosolids on land, and requires existing permit holders to submit quarterly reports. Fortunately, in Rhode Island, we're not currently applying biosolids for land application. However, the topic of PFAS is near and dear to everyone's concerns. Down on the list, but not too far in second place, is microplastics. There has been some effort working with the Narragansett Bay Commission on interest for regional utilities to explore options for regional biosolids management facility. And that really brings us to this fundamental strategy that we've introduced here, which is that we need to increase processing, specifically increasing incineration capacity. Our good friends in Maine recently passed the law prohibiting the land application of biosolids, with a fair amount of that being led by this PFAS concern. As a result of that, it's put some downward pressure on processing facilities through Massachusetts and into Rhode Island. So as our neighboring states experience similar vectors of concern and prioritization at a policy level, it becomes increasingly important that we work on stabilizing, maintaining, and assuring that we've got processing capacity for biosolids in the state. So with that in mind, I'd love to hear your ideas, any gaps or opportunities and considerations of these strategies. And I appreciate you taking the time to think about all of the diverse topics that have been brought together today. They're all connected in one way or another. And that's what makes the solid waste management plan such an exciting and important project to work on for Rhode Island. Good question about will we have an update to the viability of different treatment and destruction technologies? I think that this needs to be put out there front and center for consideration, that these type of technologies need to be considered and looked at for their viability of how to use them in Rhode Island. So I appreciate the comment, and I do think that it's something worthwhile that our consultant will need to consider on the proposed solid waste management plan. I would also comment on this topic is, the solid waste management plan is fundamentally a guide. So, some of these areas, not to paraphrase words that could be there, but it might say biosolids is an important area need to be considered. And part of that is to look at alternative treatment options. So I wouldn't expect the solid waste management plan to go into exhaustive detail, but I do think it's going to be representative of where we need to look at next. Wholeheartedly have heard the feedback not to apply biosolids, PFAS, microplastic, and overphosphating water bodies. Fortunately, in Rhode Island, that's not happening, and I would think that our Office of Water Resources will continue to maintain that. Certainly acknowledge the private-public partnerships for projects and regional planning. We're all in this together, so whether it's mixed recycling, solid waste capacity, rail transfer, EPR for household hazardous waste, rest assured we're staying current with our neighbors and other states in the region. Great point in terms of the beneficial use of the ash. I definitely can take that as a follow-up. I'm wise enough not to comment on if there's any issues there. I know that, in the biosolid classifications, we've got class A, B, and C related to the pathogenic content. So there could be some concerns about beneficial use, but I appreciate the comment and it will be considered.
1 minute.
Thank you, Abby. I feel as if there was a comment that maybe it's down below, but I'm not sure. Okay. Okay, I think we got them all. Well, thanks for your time, everybody. I know Dana's got a jet. Dana, thanks for joining us today. So I'll pass this back on to Caitlin. But again, on behalf of the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management, we're very appreciative of your time today and look forward to connecting again in the near future as this plan evolves. So Caitlin, take it away.
Great, thank you, Dave. All right, so we'll just, first of all, thank you to all of you who are hanging on. I know this has been a long workshop, but we really appreciate all the input and thoughts that you have provided. Could you go to the next slide, please, Marissa? Okay, so I know that we already sort of covered the planning process, but wanted to bring this back up to share what the next steps are. So we will take all of your feedback that you provided today and incorporate that into the strategies and goals. And then we will work with our consultants to come up with performance measures. We are also working on objectives and policies that we will share as well. And then all of this will be folded into a draft solid waste management plan, which we will share with you once it is in a final draft, but before it is finalized. And we anticipate holding another virtual session like this, in addition to an in-person workshop where we will take any feedback and incorporate that into the draft before it's all final. So I did mention at the beginning that we would have some time for a general overall Q&A. So if we can do that in one moment. If you have to go, I did just want to reiterate that the key themes and feedback shared today will be compiled and considered as the plan is refined. And if you have additional thoughts or ideas after this session, you can continue to provide input through our smart comment link. We'll put that in the chat, and it's available on our website. To stay informed about next steps, including upcoming meetings, opportunities for feedback, and updates to the plan, you can visit our website as well. So I did just want to open it up in the last 15 or so minutes for any general questions. And again, you can feel free to come off of mute or raise your hand and we'll allow you to talk if you prefer that. Otherwise, you can also use the chat. Don't be shy. I'm seeing anything come in right now. While we're waiting, I just wanted to thank all of you again for your time and your engagement and your commitment to help us move toward a more sustainable circular economy. Jared, is there something that you wanted to say?
Yes, of course, thanks to all the participants and thanks to you, Caitlin, and the team at Statewide Planning for doing exactly what Statewide Planning is intended to do, which is to coordinate the activities of various state agencies like Resource Recovery and DEM in setting a path forward for the state as a whole. So thanks to you and your team.
Of course, and thank you to all of you guys who are content experts. Okay, so seeing no other questions or comments, I think we can conclude this session. But again, we appreciate all of your input. Feel free to use our smart comment portal or email me, and we look forward to continuing this conversation as the planning process moves forward. Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.